Today I want to share with you how to make a breakfast casserole, what some people may know as a strata or a breakfast strata. This is very easy to make, and once you know the formula, you can mix and match whatever ingredients you want, and it'll always come out delicious. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferment, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning about those things, consider subscribing to my channel and don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. Well, this literally couldn't be easier to make because you're going to mix everything in one bowl, put it in your baking dish, and pop it into the oven. And speaking of the oven, the first thing that you want to do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which I believe is 180 degrees Celsius. Next, you'll want to prepare your baking dish. You'll want something that's approximately 9 inches by 12 inches. Now, I'm using an oval dish because this is what I have, but if you have a rectangular dish, that's fine too. But what you're going to want to do is butter it really well. And then what I like to do is put mine onto a baking sheet just in case there's any bubbling over. Now let's go over the ingredients, but don't worry, you don't need to write any of this down. If you open the description that's under this video, look for where it says recipe, and next to that will be a link, and that'll take you over to my website where you'll have the complete recipe with all the ingredients and the instructions. You can read it online or you can print it out, whatever you want to do. So be sure to check that description underneath the video. Well, the first thing that you're going to need is 8 cups of cubed bread. And this can be any bread that you want. I'm using sourdough, but you can use any white bread you have. You can use any whole grain bread you have, any bread. And it can be fresh, or it can be day old, or even a little past day old. And actually, a bread that's a little stale works really well because it absorbs the custard beautifully. And speaking of the custard, what you're going to need are 12 eggs and 2½ cups of cream or milk or a combination of cream and milk. And yes, you can use alternative milks. So if you want to use coconut milk or almond milk or oat milk, that will work as well. But if you do use those alternative milks, keep in mind that they do have a specific flavor associated with them, so that may influence the other ingredients that you want to add in. Next, you're going to want to have 2 cups of cheese, and you're going to want grated cheese. And you're going to want those 2 cups divided into 1.5 cups and 1/2 cup. Now, I'm using a sharp cheddar, but you could use a grated mozzarella, you could use grated Swiss, you could use a grated Colby or a Monterey Jack or a combination Colby Jack. Anything like that will work fine. And then you want 1.5 cups of some type of vegetable. Now, what I've got here is a little combination of chopped spinach, some chopped tomatoes, some chopped mushrooms, and a little bit of very finely chopped shallot. Now this could almost be a little bit of a clean out the crisper type breakfast casserole because you can really use whatever vegetables you have on hand. And as I said, I'm using some shallot in here, but you could use some yellow onion, you could use red onion, you could definitely add in a couple of cloves of garlic, just chop it up nice and fine. Any aromatic like that will be wonderful. And I've got spinach in here, but any green would work terrific. And with your greens, you just want to make sure that if they're fresh, that you've wilted them first, just on a saute pan to just soften them up. Or you can use frozen, like what I'm doing here. I've got some frozen spinach, and you just want to make sure all the moisture is squeezed out of it. And if you're using a very hard vegetable, like a carrot, for example, you can cut it up very small and then it would cook in the casserole. Or if you wanted to have larger pieces, those are best cooked maybe to like al dente before you add them in. But you've got a lot of options when it comes to putting vegetables in a breakfast casserole like this. So definitely look and see what you have in your crisper. And just get about 1.5 cups and you'll be good to go. Next, you're going to want some type of cooked meat, and you're going to need 1.5 cups. Now, I've got 1.5 cups of crisp crisply cooked bacon, but you can use a cup and a half of ham, you can use a cup and a half of chicken, you can use a cup and a half of cooked sausage or cooked ground beef, so you have a lot of options. And if you want to leave the cooked meat part out, you definitely can. Just add in another cup and a half of vegetables. And speaking of the vegetables, keep in mind, especially if you're substituting the cream or the milk with one of the alternative milks, maybe say you're going with coconut milk, you could even have for your vegetables maybe some chopped onion, some mushrooms or sweet bell peppers, and then maybe a little bit of pineapple, and then your meat could be ham. I think that would be delicious. So when you use those alternative milks, think about what flavors might really work lovely. And you can even have a little bit of fruit mixed with those vegetables. And thinking of combinations, another combination you could do, if you've got some leftover chicken, you could mix it with corn and some sweet bell pepper and maybe a little jalapeno, a Monterey Jack cheese, and you could do somewhat of like a Tex-Mex style breakfast casserole. So as you see, there's so many options available to you. Really experiment and do a lot of mixing and matching. As long as you have all the basic formulations down in terms of the amounts that you need, pretty much any combination will work, and it'll be delicious. I'm confident of it, because with all these eggs and a nice cream or milk or alternative milk and plenty of cheese, it's going to be good. Next, for seasonings, I've just got 2 teaspoons of salt, and this is just a fine ground sea salt, but use whatever you have. And even though, yes, I've got bacon and cheese, I find that with all of this bread and egg and cream, you really do need some salt. And then next, I've got a half a teaspoon of black pepper. And then finally, I've got 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard. And I find this just adds a nice little kick of flavor, and it works really well with the cheddar cheese, the sharp cheddar, which also works really well with the bacon. But you can be very flexible on this. I think the salt is pretty much very much needed. You can leave out the black pepper if you want. You could put in a hotter pepper, like maybe a little bit of cayenne. You can leave out the Dijon mustard. If you wanted to maybe do sort of like a barbecue chicken type breakfast casserole, you could add in a little barbecue sauce. If you were doing maybe an Italian one where you had mozzarella and maybe some tomatoes and arugula and onions, and you wanted to add in a little Italian seasoning, you could do that. So with these options, you can really be very flexible and experiment. Now there's 2 ways you can put this together. You can mix everything in a bowl, which is the way I like to do it. It does mean one more bowl to clean, but I find that's the easiest way to do it. The other option is you can just start layering some cubed bread and then a little bit of cheese and then your vegetables and your meat, whatever the case may be, and then pour your custard on top. What I prefer to do is put everything in a nice big bowl and mix it all together. And the reason that I like to do this, generally 2½ cups of whatever liquid you're using is sufficient. However, and there's always variation in everyone's kitchen. And depending on what kind of bread you're using, depending on maybe what size you've cubed your bread, which would affect maybe, do you have 8 cups, the same 8 cups that I have in my kitchen? All of that, sometimes you may find after you mix everything that it's a little dry. And if so, when you're mixing it like that, you can add in a little bit of your milk or cream or milk alternative before you're putting it into your baking dish. However, don't worry. If you decide to just do the layering method, and after you layer it and pour your custard on top, and you say, when you press it down, it just doesn't seem like a lot of custard is coming up, you can go ahead and maybe just drizzle a little bit more of your milk-based product onto your casserole. But I find that it just mixes better if you can add your extra liquid right into the bowl with everything and give it a good toss. Now the first thing I'm going to do is take all my cubed bread and just put it right down into my big bowl here. Sorry that that's a solid colored bowl being in stainless steel, but I just don't have a glass bowl that's this big. Next, I'm going to go ahead and pour in my heavy cream right in with my eggs. Then you just want to whip your cream or your milk and your eggs together until all of the eggs and the cream are nicely incorporated. And you just want to give this a good whisk around until everything is very well incorporated and the eggs are all broken up and it's got a nice watery consistency to it. Now we'll just go ahead and add in our salt and our pepper and our Dijon mustard. And then we'll just mix all this up. Next, what we're going to do is take our 1.5 cups of grated cheddar cheese, and we're just going to add that right to our breadcrumbs. I'm not breadcrumbs, croutons. They're not even really croutons, they're just cubed bread. Next, we'll go ahead and add in our 1.5 cups of veggies. Now I'm just going to go ahead and add in my crisply cooked bacon. Now all we want to do is just mix the cubed bread with all the other ingredients until everything's well distributed. Now once you get this all nice and mixed up, it's time to add in our custard. And we just go ahead and pour this all over the bread. Once you get all your custard poured over your mixture, just start blending everything until every piece of bread and all the other ingredients are well coated with the custard mixture. So just keep mixing it around. It might just take a few minutes. Give the bread plenty of time to start absorbing that custard, and make sure that all of the bread is, especially the bread, the other ingredients sort of naturally become coated with the custard, but make sure that all of the bread is well coated and starting to absorb this liquid. Now we're going to transfer everything to our buttered baking dish. Now I just wanted to let you know, when I was mixing my bread mixture in the bowl, I could see a little bit of the custard pooling down on the bottom, even after I had mixed it for about a minute. So I knew I had plenty of liquid in there. If for any reason it looked exceptionally dry, that's when you would want to add a little extra cream or milk, whatever you're using. Then once you get everything poured into your baking dish, you just want to flatten it out a bit to just even it out. And if you've done a layering type approach to making your casserole, what you'll be able to tell whether or not you have enough custard is if you take your spatula and then just push it down a little. If liquid starts to pool up and come on top of your spatula, then that's great. You've got plenty of custard. Once you've got your casserole nice and flattened out, you want to take that remaining 1/2 cup of cheese and just sprinkle it all across the top. Once you finish with sprinkling the cheese on top of your casserole, you're going to want to cover it. If you have a covered baking dish, great. If not, you can just cover it like I'm going to with some aluminum foil. Next, we're going to go ahead and put this into our preheated 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for 45 minutes. Then we're going to remove the aluminum foil and let it bake for another 15 minutes. Well, look at this glorious breakfast strata. It is just beautiful. Now, at 45 minutes, I remove the aluminum foil and let it go the full 15 minutes to get nice and golden and bubbly on top. But since everybody's oven's different, I do recommend that you check your strata or your breakfast casserole at 10 minutes once you remove your foil. Now it may be ready or it may need those extra 5 minutes. Now what I like to do before I serve this is just let it sit for about 10 minutes. It cools slightly. I mean, this is still quite warm, but it cools a little bit and congeals and everything kind of falls into place before you start taking out slices. Now, if you have a rectangular pan, it's very easy. You can cut squares of it and serve it like that. You can also just be very casual and rustic if you want and just take a spoon and scoop some out like that. What I'll do is I'll try to slice this, even though it'll be a little different shape since I have an oval pan here, but I just think it's going to be delicious. Oh, it slices beautifully. So I'll just take one of these slightly rounded pieces and I'll scoop this out and we'll put it on a dish and we'll take a taste. Oh goodness, I think this is just going to be wonderful. Oh, I'll take a close-up picture so that you can see it. Well, this looks glorious. And the aroma, oh my goodness, it's heavenly. Well, let's take a taste and see how all these flavors came together. Oh, Oh, that's so good. I love this combination with the bacon and the spinach, a little bit of the tomato, a little bit of those scallions. Oh, I think you're going to really enjoy this. And I really think anything that you mix in is going to be delicious. So definitely give this a try. And if you would like to make French toast and other wonderful breakfast specialties, breakfast and brunch specialties, be sure to click on this video over here. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.